See the money won't stay for your meal, getting all the piece of pie for your wife. Everybody wanna know.
Hello, what's up mga ka-law student? I am Mahmoudin Bato from University of Mindanao College of Law. And now we will be discussing administrative offenses and penalties under the 2017 Rules on Administrative Cases on Civil Service. First, we have the Rule 10 Section 50 Classification of Offenses. So, administrative offenses with corresponding penalties are classified into grave, less grave, and light depending on the gravity or depravity and effects on the government service. We have first the punishable by dismissal from the service. So the following grave offenses shall be punishable by dismissal from the service. First, we have serious dishonesty. Second, gross neglect of duty. Number three, grave misconduct. Four, being notoriously undesirable. Five, conviction of a crime involving moral turpitude. Six, falsification of official documents. Seven, physical or moral mental disorder or disability due to immoral or vicious habits. Eight, receiving for personal use of a fee, gift, or other valuable thing in the course of official duties or in connection therewith when such fee, gift, or other valuable things is given by any person in the hope or expectation of receiving a favor or better treatment than that accorded to other persons or committing acts punishable under the anti-graft law. Six, or number nine, contracting loans or money or other property from persons with whom the office of the employee has business relations. Then soliciting or accepting directly or indirectly any gift, gratuity, favor, entertainment, loan, or anything of monetary value in the course of one's official duties or in connection with any operation being regulated by or any transaction which may be affected by the functions of one's office. The propriety or impropriety of the foregoing shall be determined by its value, kinship, or relationship between giver and receiver and the motivation. A thing of monetary value is one which is eventually or manifestly excessive by its very nature. 11 is nepotism, and 12, disloyalty to the Republic of the Philippines and to the Filipino people. So first, serious dishonesty. So dishonesty means the concealment or distortion of truth in a matter of facts relevant to one's office or connected with the performance of his duty. For dishonesty to be considered serious, the presence of any one of the circumstances enumerated in Section 3 of the Civil Service Commission Resolution number 060538 of the Rules on Administrative Offense of dishonesty must be present. Number one, causing serious damage and grave prejudice to the government. Number two, directly involving property, accountable forms, or monetary for or money for which the respondent is directly accountable. And the respondent shows an intent to commit material gain, graft, and corruption. So three is exhibiting moral depravity on the part of the respondent. Four is involving civil service examination, irregularity or fake civil service eligibility such as but not limited to impersonation, cheating, and use of crib sheets, committed several times or in various occasions, committed with grave abuse of authority. Seven, committed with fraud and or falsification of official documents relating to the respondent's employment. And lastly, number eight, other analogous circumstances. Dishonesty is classified into three acts. Uh, Serious dishonesty, less serious dishonesty, and simple dishonesty. Serious dishonesty is punishable by dismissal. So in the case of Lorenzo versus Office the Ombudsman, the Commission on Audit revealed a cash shortage amounting to 171,240. And in Lorenzo's cash accounts representing collections from authorized school contributions or fees and school operating funds, Lorenzo denied being an accountable officer and claimed that she only assisted in counting money. She failed to produce the missing funds despite demand. Now, the Supreme Court affirmed the Court of Appeals decision, finding Maria Luisa Ardoraño guilty of serious dishonesty, grave misconduct, and conduct prejudicial to the best interest of the service, and failing to account for a cash shortage as an acting collecting officer. This case reinforces the accountability of public officers handling government funds and the consequences of failing to comply with regulations regarding the handling and reporting of such funds. So, in the case of Ombudsman versus Espina. This case involves a petition for review on certiorari filed by the Office of Ombudsman against Police Superintendent Rainier A. Espina. So the petition challenges the Court of Appeals decision which modified the Ombudsman's ruling regarding Espina's administrative liability concerning procurement irregularities in the Philippine National Police RPN. So here, the court dismissed that Espina is not liable for grave misconduct or serious dishonesty due to the absence of evidence showing corrupt motives or flagrant disregard of established rules. Instead, the court held Espina administratively liable for gross neglect of duty. It was found that Espina, by merely relying on the IRF, prepared by his subordinate without independently verifying the supporting documents failed to exercise the degree care expected of a person in his supervisory position. So the court noted that his negligence in the performance his duty, especially giving the large amount of taxpayers' money amounting 409,740,000 involved constitute gross neglect of duty. So in the case of Empress versus Civil Service Commission, so here Empress was dismissed from government service after it was discovered that he committed serious dishonesty by having another person take the career service sub-professional examination on his behalf. Despite later seeking authentication of his eligibility, claiming good faith, and appealing for leniency based on his service records, the Service Commission and Court of Appeals upheld his dismissal. So the issue before the Supreme Court is whether the Court of Appeals erred in affirming the CSC decision. So the Supreme Court upheld the dismissal of Emmanuel F. Empress for serious dishonesty, falsification, grave misconduct, and conduct prejudicial to the service after it was proven that another person took the civil service examination on his behalf. The court ruled that his act constituted fraud under the CSC rules, particularly impersonation and falsification, and rejected his claim of good faith as an attempt to cover up the fraud. It emphasized that mitigating factors like length of service or lack of prior offense do not apply when there is no valid right to hold public office. So dismissal was deemed proper under the revised rules of administrative cases on civil service. Now let's proceed to gross neglect of duty. So negligence is one of care required by their circumstances. It is a relative or comparative, not an absolute term, and its application depends upon the situation of the parties and the degree of care and vigilance which the circumstances reasonably impose in the case of US versus Juanillo. So to neglect is to omit by carelessness or design, not from necessity, and there can be no possibility of neglecting to do that which cannot be done. So neglect as applied to public officers means a failure in his part to do and perform some of the duties to his office, and when such neglect from the gravity of case or frequency of the instances becomes so serious in its character as to endanger or threaten the public welfare, gross and justifies the interference of the executive upon whom is places the responsibility of helping the affairs of the state in a proper condition by taking notice thereof. So careless or unintentional failure to exercise diligence in the performance of duty and including willful neglect or misfeasance involving failure in the performance of legal duties. In Gutierrez versus Commission Audit, the Supreme Court reiterated the established test of negligence, which is standard draw from tort law principles, applicable even in administrative cases involving government officials or employees. So, the test of negligence is: did the defendant, in doing the alleged negligent act, use the reasonable care and caution which an ordinarily prudent person would have used in the same situation? So, the law considers that what would be reckless, blameworthy, or negligent in the man of ordinary intelligence and prudence and determines liability by that. That was in the case of Gutierrez versus Commission on Audit. The case involves Fernando B. Arias and Merofe Ronda. So, DPW's official charged with gross neglect of duty and grave misconduct after failing to detect or prevent the fraudulent prepared job orders involving non-existent or unassigned vehicles. So, despite the supervisor now, in the case of Office of the Ombudsman versus Fronda and Arias, the DPWH officials charged with gross neglect of duty and grave misconduct after failing to detect or prevent fraudulent prepared job orders involving non-existent or unassigned vehicles. Despite their supervisory roles, they approved and processed numerous documents that facilitated the release of 4.3 million in government funds without proper oversight. So the issue is whether their inaction and failure to perform their duties made them administratively liable. Here, the Supreme Court affirmed the dismissal of Fronda and Arias for gross neglect of duty and grave misconduct, holding them administratively liable for approving fraudulent transaction involving 4.3 million in fictitious vehicle repairs. Despite their supervisory roles, they failed to detect or spot or stop glaring irregularities, such as job orders for non-existent vehicles, repeated repairs on the same day, and splitting of orders to evade audit and bidding rules. So demonstrating a clear breach of duty and willful disregard of regulations. So the court here emphasized that public officials in oversight positions are expected to exercise diligence, and a fail to do so even without directly committing fraud makes them complicit. Their neglect and misconduct warranted dismissal, along with accessory penalty under the Civil Service Law. So in the case of Linsangan versus Office of the Ombudsman, here Attorney Teodoro C. Linsangan, Register of Deeds in Cabanatuan, issued a certification stating that several land titles were missing based on inputs from his subordinates. However, Leonardo Orig later found the titles in the files contradicting the certification. So Linsangan claimed good faith and invoked Arias doctrine, saying he relied on his staff. The ombudsman found him guilty of gross neglect of duty for failing to verify the accuracy of the certification. So the Court of Appeals affirmed, ruling that mere reliance on subordinate without proper diligence was not a valid defense. The Supreme Court reversed the ruling of the Court of Appeals and the Ombudsman, holding Attorney Linsangan was not guilty of gross neglect of duty, citing the Arias Doctrine. So the court ruled that a head office may rely in good faith on the work of subordinates in the regular course of duty, especially when no irregularity is apparent. Linsangan act of signing a certification based on a verified inventory prepared by his staff did not amount to gross negligence, as there was no evidence of bad faith, prior knowledge of the falsity, or red flags, would have required further inquiry. Considering the volume of responsibility he handled as a register of deeds, the court found his reliance on competent personnel reasonable. Uh, Thus, in the absence of conscious indifference or failure to exercise even slight care, the court held that Linsangan could not be held administratively liable. The case of BSP versus Bool, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, uh, a contract to French firm Francois Charles Overture Fiduciary for printing 100 2 and 100 piso banknotes and designated Nelson C. Bool, Manager 1 of the Simulant Division. Um, the oversee quality control in France. So, however, a typographical error was later discovered in the 100 piso notes, where President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo's surname was misspelled as Arovo. So, BSP held Bool administratively liable for gross neglect of duty and dismissed him from service, with the CSC affirming the decision and adding a bar from taking the civil service exam. The Court of Appeals, however, modified the penalty to a 1 year suspension, citing mitigating factors such as good faith, length of service, and it being his first offense. The issue is whether the Court of Appeals erred in reducing the penalty despite the finding of gross neglect of duty. So the Supreme Court granted the petition and reinstated the penalty of dismissal against Nelson C. Bool, ruling that gross neglect of duty is a grave offense warranting dismissal even for a first offense under both the Uniform Rules and Revised Rules of Administrative Cases and the Civil Service. So the court emphasized that mitigating or alternative circumstances must be clearly proven and cannot be automatically applied to reduce penalties. Uh, it found Boal's failure to detect the obvious misspelling of the president's name in high profile currency inexcusable, especially given his role in ensuring quality control. His negligence caused reputational harm and eroded public trust, and his long service was not considered mitigating, particularly when it enabled the offense. So let's proceed to grave misconduct. Grave misconduct is an act that involves a breach of good faith and right action that are impliedly required to all officers. It is also a transgression of some established and definite rules of act, more particularly unlawful behavior of gross negligence by a public officer. It implies a wrongful intention and not a mere error of judgment. So, grave misconduct by a public officer is defined as unlawful behavior of gross negligence that involves elements of corruption, willful intent to violate the law, or disregard of established rules. Corruption refers to using of one's position to gain unlawful benefit. In Quiros versus Orfilia, the Supreme Court highlighted that even acts like public quarreling and discourtesy among court employees within court premises reflect conduct that is incompatible with the ethical standard mandated by Republic Act 6713 or the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards of Public Officials and Employees. So in grave misconduct, as distinguished from simple misconduct, the elements of corruption, clear intent to violate the law, or flagrant disregard of established rules must be manifest. So, in Nervasa versus Sanchez, the court clarified that misconduct, whether simple, grave, or grave, must be related to the performance of official duties. However, for it to qualify as grave misconduct, it must show a clear breach of law with corrupt or willful intent. So the office of the ombudsman versus Apollonia defined grave misconduct as unlawful behavior of gross negligence by a public officer coupled with elements of corruption or willful disregard of rules. So in Sevilla versus COA, the court focused on corruption as a key element, defining it as the unlawful or wrongful use of one's position to gain benefit for oneself. So it underscores the abuse of entrusted power of private gain. Finally, in the case of Largo versus Court of Appeals, it introduced the closely related concept of conduct prejudicial to the best interest of the service, which, while not necessarily involving corruption, reflects behavior that tarnishes the image and integrity of public office. Now, in the case of Largo versus Court of Appeals, here Largo, Section Chief of National Power Corruption or NPC of Angat River Hydroelectric Power Plant, was charged with grave misconduct, conduct prejudicial to the best interest of the service, oppression, and willful violation of NPC Circular Number 97 to 66, which prohibit firearms on NPC premises. So, on October 13, 1997, after feeling insulted at a birthday party, Largo went to a colleague's quarter, threatened to kill him, and fired his gun twice in the presence of the colleague's family. Though Largo retired effectively January 1, 1998, NPC pursued the case, initially recommending a penalty for simple misconduct. However, the NPC president found him guilty of grave misconduct and ordered dismissal, later reduced to a 1 year suspension. So the Civil Service Commission reversed this and reinstated the penalty of dismissal with accessory penalties, which was affirmed by the Court of Appeals. So the issue was whether Largo was guilty of grave misconduct warranting dismissal. Now, the Supreme Court ruled that administrative cases against Teodulio V. Largo remained valid, despite his retirement as a complaint was filed before his separation from service. However, the court found him not guilty of grave misconduct, emphasizing that such offense requires a clear link between the wrongful act and the official duties, along with elements of corruption, willful intent to violate the law, or blatant disregard of rules. So while Largo's actions were inappropriate and condemnable, they were personal in nature and unrelated to his official role as section chief of NPC, thus failing to meet the criteria for grave misconduct. Now let's proceed to Herrera versus Mago. So this case involves Herrera, a vice mayor of Vinson Camarines Norte, who was found administratively liable for grave misconduct and conduct prejudicial to the best interest of service for facilitating the release of 76,800 pesos in rata differentials to former municipal councilors despite objections from the municipal accountant, treasurer, and budget officer, who argued the councilor were no longer in service when the supplemental budget was passed. Herrera insisted on processing the payment, telling the accountant he would take responsibility if allowed by COA. So, the disbursement lacked required signatures, and the Commission on Audit later issued a notice of disallowance, prompting the return of the funds. Herrera claimed good faith and political motivations behind the complaint, but the Ombudsman found him guilty and imposed dismissal, later reduced to a fine. The Court of Appeals affirmed the ruling and denied the motion for consideration. The issue is whether Herrera was guilty of grave misconduct for authorizing the disallowed disbursement despite clear legal objections. So the Supreme Court ruled uh, Ombudsman and Court of Appeals finding Vice Mayor Herrera guilty of grave misconduct and conduct prejudicial to the service for facilitating the release of 76,800 in rata differentials to former councilors no longer in office. Despite legal objections, he signed the disbursements without required approval. His statement, ipaparelease ko yan at ako na ang may sagot kung i-disallow yan ng COA, showed clear intent to violate the law, reflecting bad faith, abuse of authority, and blatant disregard of rules, hallmarks of grave misconduct. The court affirmed his dismissal with full accessory penalty. Now let's proceed to being notoriously undesirable. So, how can a person be accused of being notoriously undesirable. So, this offense is based mainly on the general reputation of an employee for being difficult to work with due to his or her quarrelsome attitude and or repeated infractions of office rules. The focus in his offense is the totality of conduct in office and not his liability for the individual's act. So, in the administrative offenses of being notoriously undesirable, we have twofold test uh, is employed to read whether it is common knowledge or general known as universally believed to be true or manifest to the world that the employee committed the act imputed against him. Second is whether he had contracted the habit for any of the enumerated misdemeanor. Now let's proceed to the case of Recto Sambangon versus Public Attorney's Office of Valenzuela. So this case involves Recto Sambangon who after being reassigned to Pau Valenzuela made violent threats and showed aggressive behavior toward colleagues. Witness confirmed her repeated outbursts and confrontations, prompting charge of grave misconduct and being notoriously undesirable, while the CSC downgraded the offense to simple misconduct due to emotional distress. The Court of Appeals reversed this, finding her behavior habitual and widely known, thus making her notoriously undesirable under the civil service rules. So here, the Supreme Court found that Attorney Sambahon guilty of being notoriously undesirable and grave misconduct, citing her repeated and widely known violent threat and aggressive behavior in the workplace. Applying a twofold test under civil service rules, the court ruled that her actions were not isolated outbursts but part of a pattern of hostility, rendering her unfit for public service. Her conduct violated ethical standards and met the definition of grave offense under the revised rules of administrative cases on civil service, as grave misconduct carries the heavier penalty, with uh, the court upheld her dismissal from service along with disqualification from the future government employment and forfeiture of retirement benefits. In the case of Escanio versus Manaois, Adrian P. Manaois faced multiple administrative complaints from his supervisor, Maria Escanio, supportedly by testimonies from co-workers and superiors citing gross insubordination, neglect of duty, courtesy, and other misconduct. His unprofessional action uh, is a, included issuing unauthorized memoranda, accusing colleagues of incompetence, walking out of official meeting, and incurring unauthorized absences. So he was repeatedly transferred between CTA divisions due to his inability to work harmoniously with others. These repeated and well-documented acts of misconduct, which disrupted the efficiency and integrity of public service, form the basis for charging him with being notoriously undesirable under civil service rules. Supreme Court found that Manao is guilty of being notoriously undesirable, citing his repeated acts of rudeness, insubordination, and unprofessional behavior that disrupted workplace harmony and institutional integrity. Testimonies from the Human Resource Department and other CTA offices confirm his consistent inability to maintain professional relationship and his history of conflict with supervisors. Applying the Civil Service Commission's twofold test, whether the misconduct is widely known and whether it reflects a habitual pattern, the court held that Manao's reputation and quarrelsome and difficult uh, held that Manao's reputation are quarrelsome and difficult along with the multiple substantiated incident or discourtesy and defiance met the standard of notoriously undesirability. The court emphasized that an employee who cannot work harmoniously with others harms the institution and warrants appropriate corrective action to preserve the integrity of the judiciary. In the case of concerned citizen of Lawag City versus Arzaga and Mauricio, uh, administrative matter P94106, This case arose from anonymous letter accusing Alfredo Mauricio, a court employee in Lawag City, of serious misconduct. While the allegations were unsubstantiated, investigation revealed that Mauricio had a prior conviction for frustrated murder, multiple dismissal criminal charges, and a history of administrative complaints for serious misconduct and insubordination. He also misused the name of a judge to solicit favors, further reflecting his unfitness for public service. Despite disclosing his conviction in his job application, the Supreme Court found his pattern of violent and problematic behavior consistent with the administrative offense of being notoriously undesirable and ruled that he be dismissed from service. Now, the Supreme Court held that Mauricio is guilty of being notoriously undesirable, a grave offense under Section 23, Rule 14 of the Rules implementing Book 5 of Executive Order 292 and relevant service laws. So the court emphasized that public service demands integrity and discipline, and Mauricio's criminal records, misconduct, and unprofessional behavior clearly made him unfit to remain in the judiciary. His behavior undermined public confidence in the courts and violated the ethical standards expected of public servants. To be found undesirable, there must be a showing that is common knowledge or widely believed that the employee committed misconduct and that such acts reflects a pattern or habit of improper behavior. Even when prior criminal charges are dismissed, a pattern of violent or unethical behavior may still render an employee unfit for continued service in the judiciary. So now let's proceed to conviction of a crime involving moral turpitude. So moral turpitude has been defined as including any act done contrary to justice, honesty, modesty, or good morals. An act of baseless vileness or depravity in the private and social duties which a man owes his fellow men to society in general, contrary to the accepted and customary rule of right and duty between man and woman, are conduct contrary to justice, honesty, modesty, or good morals. So, in the case of Zari versus Flores, it laid down it enumerated what are the cases on conviction of a crime of involving moral turpitude. So, first is we have the drug pushing, adultery, concubinage, rape, arson, evasion of income tax, baratry, or ambulance chasing. So 8 is blackmail, 9 bigamy, 10 bribery, 11 fabrication of evidence, 12 offenses against pension laws, 13 perjury, 14 seduction under promise of marriage, 15 estafa, 16 falsification of public document, 17 estafa through falsification of public document. So in the case of Office of the Court Administrator versus Presiding Judge Ruiz, this case involves a judge previously convicted by the Sandigan Bayan for violating Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act and malversation of public funds. So the Office of the Court Administration, or OCA, initiated an administrative case against the judge, who argued it was premature due to the pending appeal of his criminal convictions. So the Supreme Court, however, asserted its power to take administrative action against judges for violation of laws, regardless of the finality of criminal convictions. The court ultimately dismissed Judge Ruiz from service and disbarred him, finding him liable for acts involving moral turpitude. Here in the case of Office of the Court Administrator versus Librado, so Vincent P. Librado, a deputy sheriff of MTCC branch 1 in Iligan City, was charged and convicted for selling and possessing illegal drugs, shabu and marijuana, a crime involving moral turpitude. Despite being granted probation, the Supreme Court ruled that his conviction warranted dismissal from service. So the court emphasized that public office is a public trust, requiring the highest degree of highest standard of morality. Crimes involving moral turpitude like drug pushing seriously undermines public confidence in government institutions and justify removal from office regardless of probation or rehabilitation efforts. uh, in Red disbarment proceeding against Attorney Diosdado Q. Gutierrez. Here, Gutierrez, a lawyer admitted in the Philippine bar in 1945, he was convicted of murder and originally sentenced to death. After serving part of his sentence, he received a conditional pardon in 1958. When a complaint for his disbarment was filed, the court ruled that a conditional pardon does not erase the conviction of its moral implication. Uh, Thus, Gutierrez was disbarred and his name was removed from the roll of lawyers. So the court emphasized that only a full pardon can remove the effect of a conviction, and that crime involving moral turpitude, such as murder, justify disbarment to uphold the integrity and ethical standard of legal profession. Falsification of official documents. Any public officer, employee, or a notary who taking advantage of his official position shall falsify a document by committing any of the following acts. First, as we have counterfeiting or imitating any handwriting, signature, or rubric. Second, causing it to appear that persons have participated in any act or proceeding when they did not in fact so participate. Third, attributing to persons who have participated in an act or proceeding statements other than those in fact made by them. Fourth is making untruthful statements in narration of facts. Five is altering true dates. Six, making any alteration or intercalation in a genuine document which changes its meaning. Seven, issuing in an authenticated form a document purporting to be a copy of an original document when no such original exists, or including in such a copy a statement contrary to or different from that of the genuine original, or intercalating any instrument or note relative to the issuance thereof in a protocol, registry, or official books. That's in the article 171 of the revised penal code. What are the documents that commonly falsified? So we have Form 48 DTRs, Form 212 PDS or personal data sheets, diploma, OTR certificates, um, uh, official transcript record certificates, official receipts submitted for liquidation, medical certificates, certificates of appearance, Form 137 or Form 138, that's the school card, uh, and school records. So 9 is vouchers, 10 birth certificate, 11 marriage certificate, 12 death certificate, 13 PRC ratings, 14 CSC eligibility. The case of administrative case for dishonesty and falsification of official documents against Noel V. Luna. Here, Luna indicated in his personal data sheet or PDS that he had a BS Electrical Engineering degree, despite lacking 54 units to complete it. So after an investigation, the Supreme Court found Luna guilty of dishonesty and falsification of a public document. His inconsistent explanation undermined his credibility, and his entry implying completion of the degree was seen as a deliberate attempt to mislead. Luna was dismissed from service with forfeiture of all retirement benefits except accrued leave credits and disqualification from future government employment. So the court emphasized that judicial employees must exemplify integrity and honesty at all times. In the case of dishonesty against Randy S. Villanueva, um, here Villanueva resigned to work abroad, but was later found to have falsified his daily time records to claim overtime pay on Saturdays. He was actually attending classes. So the court found him guilty of falsification of official documents and dishonesty, ordering his dismissal from service with forfeiture of benefits, except accrued leave credits, and disqualification from future government office. So the ruling stressed that court employees must uphold the highest integrity, and such grave offense warrant dismissal even on the first offense. Office of the Administrative, Court Administrator versus Jaime P. Casilag. So here Casilag is sheriff for at RTC Manila. He was found to have falsified his daily time records for February 2004 by marking himself present despite being on leave for 6 days. The discrepancies were confirmed by comparing the DTR with the court daily time registry book. Casilag also failed to submit his required explanation despite repeated directives. So the court found him guilty of falsification of an official document and dishonesty, emphasizing that such acts determine the integrity and accountability expected of public officers. As public office is a public trust, any act of dishonesty and falsification is a grave offense warranting strict disciplinary action. Now let's proceed to physical or mental disorder or disability due to immoral or vicious habits. So the Civil Service Commission Memorandum Circular number 12 to 94, March 10, 1994, Section 2 drop from the rules, Section 2.2.t, physical and mental unfitness. So an officer or an employee who is continuously absent for more than 1 year by reason of illness may be declared physically unfit to perform his duties, and the head of office, in the exercise of his sound judgment, may consequently drop him from the roles. So, letter B, an officer or an employee who is intermittently, uh, intermittently absent by reason of illness for at least 260 working days during a 24-month period may also be declared physical unfit by the head of office. Letter C. An officer or employee who is behaving abnormally for an extended period which manifests continuing mental disorder and incapacity to work as reported by his co-workers or immediate supervisors and confirmed by the head of office may likewise be dropped from the roles. For the purpose of three preceding paragraph, notice shall be given to the employee containing a brief statement of the nature of his incapacity to work. So in the case of Romagos versus Metro Cebu Water District, here Vilma A. Romagos, an employee of Metro Cebu Water District, was dropped from the roles due to alleged mental incapacity based on reports of erratic behavior. Despite her appeal citing procedural lapses and insufficient evidence, the CSC and the Court of Appeals upheld her dismissal. However, the Supreme Court reversed the decision, declaring her separation illegal and ordering her reinstatement with back wages. So the court ruled that proper procedures, including notice, opportunity to be heard, and substantial evidence of continued mental disorder affecting work were not followed. So the decision underscored the need for due process to protect employees from unjust removal and alleged smoking and possible drug use of Louis Mark Q. de Guzman. Um, here, de Guzman, a storekeeper, one at the Supreme Court was reported for smoking in a stockroom, which smelled of marijuana. An NBI drug test confirmed he was positive for tetrahydrocannabinol, and he later admitted to using marijuana. So the Supreme Court found de Guzman guilty of grave misconduct and ordered his dismissal from service. So the court held that his drug use violated RA 9161 and demonstrated a clear intent to break the law, qualifying as grave misconduct. Under civil service rules, a first offense of drug use warrant dismissal. His admission, made only after being confronted with evidence, was not considered mitigating. Now, in the case of Boots Office of the Ombudsman versus Regalado. So Maria Rowena Regalado solicited 50,000 and later 30,000 pesos from Santa Marta Daycare Center in exchange for facilitating accreditation, stating, "Yes, my dear, that's a system ng government." Uh, the Office of the Ombudsman found her guilty of grave misconduct and violation of RA 6713, ordering her dismissal. So while the Court of Appeals reduced the penalty to a 1 year suspension, the Supreme Court reversed this, reinstating the dismissal. So the court ruled that Regalado acts of extortion and bribery demonstrated grave misconduct, warranting dismissal, stressing that no mitigating circumstances applied to such grave offense even for a first time offender. Now let's proceed to number 8, receiving for personal use of fee, gift, or other valuable things in the course of official duties or in connection therewith when such fee, gift, or other valuable thing is given by any person in the hope or expectation of receiving a favor or better treatment than accorded to other persons or committing acts punishable under the anti-graft law. So Section 2C of Republic Act 3019, Anti-Graft and Corruption Act, receiving any gift, including the act of accepting directly or indirectly gift from a person other than a member of the public officer's immediately family, in behalf of himself or of any member of his family or relative with the fourth civil degree, either by consanguinity or affinity, even on the occasion of a family celebration or national festivity like Christmas, if the value of the gift is under circumstances manifestly excessive. The revised Penal Code Article 211, indirect bribery, the penalties of prison correctional in its medium and maximum periods, and public censure shall be imposed upon any public officer who shall accept gift ordered offered to him by reasons of his office. The elements are as follows: that the offender is a public officer. Second, that he accepts gift. Third, that the said gifts are offered to him by reason of his office. In the case of Attorney Malibagos Santos versus Francisco, here Sheriff Juanito B. Francisco Jr. received a check of 8,000 pesos from a party involved in an extrajudicial foreclosure, claiming it was a token of appreciation. So the Supreme Court found him guilty of gross misconduct for accepting money in connection with his official duties, emphasizing that public officer must not receive any gift or monetary consideration, regardless of the amount or intent. Such acts undermine integrity of public trust in the judiciary. So the court ruled that even voluntary tokens create a perception of impropriety, reinforcing that public office is a public trust, requiring the highest ethical standard. So in Lukman versus People of the Philippines, Rakil Ali M. Lukman, then OIC Regional Executive Director of DNR Region uh, 12, demanded 2,500,000 pesos from private complaints in exchange for facilitating their free patent application, ultimately receiving 1,500,000. Despite receiving the money, the applications remained pending. So the Supreme Court affirmed Lukman's conviction by Sandigan Bayan for violating Section 3C of RA 3019, Anti-Graft and Corruption Practices Act, finding that he, as public officer, unlawfully demanded and accepted money in consideration for official acts. So the court upheld the credibility of the witnesses and evidence, but modified the penalty imposed. Contracting loans of money or other property from person with whom the office of the employee has business relations. So the act of contracting loans of money or other property from persons with whom the office of the employee has business relation is punishable by dismissal from the service under the 2017 rules on administrative cases in the civil service. That was in the case of Santos versus Raimundo. In the case of Santos versus Raimundo, Emma J. Raimundo, a court employee, repeatedly failed to pay debts to complainant Maria Rosana Santos, despite entering into a compromise agreement acknowledging her obligations. She also ignored multiple court directives and used her positions to secure loans. So, contracting loans from those with business ties to one's office is a grave offense under the 2017 Rules on Administrative Cases on Civil Service. So, Raimundo's continued non-compliance showed bad faith and deliberate uh, the evasion of her obligation, amounting to insubordination, given her repeated misconduct despite prior sanction. So, the Supreme Court dismissed her from service, forfeited her retirement benefits, except leave credits, and permanently disqualified her from public office in the case of Hasso versus Londres. So here, Gloria L. Londres, a court's stenographer, borrowed 100,000 pesos from attorney Prosencio J. Hasso in 2013, issuing a promissory note and a post-dated check, but later failed to repay despite demands. So Londres admitted the debts, citing personal tragedies as reasons for non-payment and claimed partial payment of the 9,000 pesos. So here, the court found her guilty of conduct of prejudicial to the best interest of the service, emphasizing that court employees must uphold high ethical standards even in private transaction, as this was her first offense and no misuse of her position was proven. She was suspended for 1 month and warned of harsher penalties for future violations. Uh, Number 10 on under the administrative offenses and penalties, soliciting or accepting directly or indirectly any gift, gratuity, favor, entertainment, loan, or anything of monetary value in the course of one's official duties in connection with any operation being regulated by or any transaction which may be affected by the function of one's office. So the propriety or impropriety of the foregoing shall be determined by its value, kinship, or relationship between giver and receiver on the motivation. A thing of monetary value is one in which is evidently or manifestly excessive by its very nature. So, Republic Act number 6713, public officials and employees shall not solicit or accept directly or indirectly any gift, gratuity, favor, entertainment, loan, or anything of monetary value from any person in the course of their official duties or in connection with any operation being regulated by or any transaction which may be affected by the functions of their office. As to gifts or grants from foreign government, the Congress consent to the first is the acceptance and retention by a public official or employee of a gift of nominal value tendered and received as a souvenir or mark of courtesy. Second is the acceptance by a public official or employee of a gift in the nature of a scholarship or fellowship, grant, or medical treatment. Or third, the acceptance by a public official or employee of travel grants or expenses for travel taking place entirely outside the Philippines, such as allowance, transportation, food, and lodging, of more than nominal value if such acceptance is appropriate or consistent with the interests of the Philippines and permitted by the head of office, branch of agency to which he belongs. Till the Ombudsman shall prescribe such regulation as may be necessary to carry out the purpose of these subsections, including pertinent reporting and disclosure requirement. So in the case of Ruelan versus Civil Service Commission, this case involves Ruelan, a postmaster who was dismissed from service for misconduct and dishonesty after allegedly taking advantage of an illiterate elderly woman regarding her social security benefits. So the Supreme Court upheld the Civil Service Commission's decision to dismiss Ruelan, finding that he violated civil service rules by borrowing money from a person with whom his office had business relations. So the court emphasized that public officials is a public trust and public officers must be held to the highest standard of integrity and accountability. Public officials can be disciplined for violating civil service rules even if graft and corruption are not proven, and highlights the importance of maintaining public trust. In Malabanan versus Ruiz, here is Sheriff Rival P. Ruiz issued a billing statement charging UCPB Savings Bank 490,000 pesos, uh, 5,000 per title for 98 titles after an auction sale. Without proper court approval as required by law, Ruiz claimed it was only a guide. But the court found it constituted improper solicitation under Section 50A10 of the 2017 revised rules of administrative cases on civil service. Even though no payment was made, the act of soliciting unauthorized fees violated fixed fee rules and demonstrated misconduct. So here Ruiz was found guilty and was dismissed from service without forfeiture of all retirement benefits except accrued leave credits. So and perpetual disqualification from government employment. Now, now in Memorandum Circular Number 24 Series of 2017, or what we call Ora Ora or Omnibus Rules on Appointments and Other Human Resource Actions, um, Section 125 is that no appointment in the national government or any branch or instrumentality thereof, including government-owned or controlled corporation with original charter, shall be made in favor of a relative of the appointing or recommending officer or authority, or of the chief of the bureau of or office, or of the person exercising immediate supervision over the appointee. The followings are exempted from the operation of the rules on nepotism. So, number one is persons employed in a confidential capacity. Number two, teachers. Three, physicians. Four, members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Five, science and technology personnel under RA number 843952. Six is other position as may be provided by law. Reason versus Office of the Ombudsman in for Mindanao that this case involved Dr. Ramil A. Baguisan. He is a chief of Hospital 1 of Cortez Municipal Hospital. He was found guilty of grave misconduct by the Office of the Ombudsman for designating his wife to multiple positions within the hospital in addition to her existing role as nutritionist, dietitian 1. So the Supreme Court affirmed the Court of Appeals decision upholding the Ombudsman's ruling that such designation constitute nepotism, a violation of Section 59, Chapter 8, Title 1A, Book 5 of the Executive Orders Number 292, regardless of whether the position were plantilla or if additional compensation was received. So the court emphasized that prohibition against nepotism is comprehensive and unqualified, designed to ensure objectivity in public service appointments and that designation of a relative to a position, even a non-existent one, falls within the scope of the prohibition. The strict interpretation of nepotism laws in the Philippines and underscored the importance of maintaining impartiality in government appointments. In the case of City Mayor De Bulgado and De Bulgado versus Civil Service Commission, Mayor Rogelio De Bulgado appointed his wife, Victoria De Bulgado, as General Services Officer of San Carlos City despite their marital relationship. The Civil Service Commission disapproved the appointment, citing the prohibition on nepotism under Section 59, Book 5 of the Revised Administrative Code 1987. So petitioner argued that the rule applied only to original, not promotional appointments, and that Victoria's long service justified the promotion. The Supreme Court ruled that the nepotism prohibition applies to all types of appointments, including promotions, to uphold merit-based public service and prevent favoritism. So the court upheld the Supreme Court, the Civil Service Commission recall of the appointment, finding no grave of abuse of discretion or due process violation. So the petition was dismissed and affirming that the appointment was void from the beginning. Now let's proceed to the last offense, that is loyalty to the Republic of the Philippines and to the Filipino people. So that's under Presidential Decree 971 or PD 971. Disloyalty to the government as an abandonment or renunciation of one's loyalty to the Republic of the Philippines, advocating the overthrow of the government. Disloyalty demonstrates lack of loyalty or allegiance to the Philippine government or state. It typically involves action that undermine the integrity, security, or sovereignty of the nation. In the case of Casin versus Kaluwag, Judge of First Instance of Albay and Teodoro Regalado, Teodoro Regalado was elected mayor of Malinaw, Albay. Sixto Casin filed a quo warranto action alleging Regalado was ineligible due to disloyalty to the Republic of the Philippines under Section 172 of the Revised Election Code. A criminal action for treason based on substantially the same acts of disloyalty was pending against Regalado before the People's Court. The Supreme Court ruled that the Court of First Instance has jurisdiction to try a quo warranto case based on disloyalty, even if a criminal cases for treason involving substantially the same act is pending before the People's Court. So the court held that quo warranto proceeding to determine disloyalty for purposes of disqualification from public office requires only a preponderance of evidence, unlike criminal conviction for treason. And that is the end of our discussion or lecture for this topic. Hope to have a next discussion with you. Thank you.
Everybody